I never wanted to go back to Derry. But last summer, an old childhood friend, James, called me out of the blue. His voice trembled as he begged me to return. "It's happening again," he whispered. I didn't need an explanation to know what he meant. I grew up in Derry, a quaint little town with a dark, unspeakable secret. Back then, we never talked about the kids who went missing every few years. It was just something everyone accepted, like bad weather or the change of seasons. But those of us who survived knew better. We knew there was something wrong with Derry, something lurking just beneath its surface. When I got James's call, memories came flooding back. I thought I'd buried them for good, the sleepless nights, the fear of storm drains, the thing with the painted face. But deep down, I always knew it was only a matter of time before it came back. I arrived in Derry a few days later. The town looked the same, almost frozen in time. I could still point out the alley where my friends and I used to ride our bikes, the diner where we'd share milkshakes, and the school we dreaded. But the air felt heavier, like the town itself was holding its breath. James had gathered the rest of us, Sarah, the brave one, Ben, the quiet thinker, Lily, the cynic, and me, the reluctant leader. We hadn't seen each other in years, but the bond we shared as kids was still there. We didn't have to say much to know why we were all here. We'd faced it once before and survived. James led us to his kitchen table, where he'd spread out old newspaper clippings. They detailed recent disappearances, a young boy snatched from a park, a teenager vanishing from her front porch. The descriptions were eerily similar to what had happened to us decades ago. "We have to stop it," James said, his voice shaking. I didn't want to agree. The thought of facing that thing again made my stomach churn, but I knew he was right. We couldn't leave Derry to its fate. That night, I had a dream, or maybe it was a memory. I was 10 years old, riding my bike home from school. It was late, and the streets were empty. As I pedaled past a storm drain, I heard something, laughter. It echoed unnaturally, like it was coming from somewhere deep underground. When I glanced back, I saw a pair of yellow eyes glowing from the darkness. "Hello there," a voice cooed, soft and mocking. And then a face appeared, painted white, with a grin that stretched too wide and teeth that were too sharp. A red balloon floated beside it. I woke up in a cold sweat. The next day, we went to the library to research Derry's history. Ben, always the researcher, discovered that every 27 years, there was a spike in disappearances and deaths. The incidents were always hushed up, buried in the town's collective denial. And every time, kids were the main targets. We knew we had to go to the source, the old sewer system beneath the town. That's where we'd faced it before, and that's where it would be now. The entrance to the sewers was hidden behind an abandoned factory. As we descended into the darkness, the air grew colder. The smell of mildew and rot was overwhelming. Our flashlights barely pierced the gloom, but we pressed on, following the faint sound of water dripping. And then we heard it, laughter. Soft at first, then louder, echoing off the walls. "Hello, my old friends," the voice called out. It was playful, almost friendly, but it sent chills down my spine. The light from Sarah's flashlight landed on a figure up ahead. It was a clown, its star. Its painted face was the same, but its eyes were ancient and cruel. It held a single red balloon, and its grin widened as we approached. "You can't stop me," it hissed, its voice shifting between tones, childlike, deep, mocking. "I am every fear, every nightmare. I am eternal." And then it attacked. The sewer tunnel seemed to come alive. The walls twisted and stretched, faces pressing out of the brickwork, screaming silently. Shadows danced in the flickering light, forming monstrous shapes that lunged at us. We fought back, not with weapons, but with courage and unity. Each of us faced our worst fears, illusions conjured by it to break us. Sarah saw her drowned sister reaching for her. Ben faced his abusive father. I confronted the memory of my brother, taken by it when we were kids. But we remembered something important: it thrived on fear. The more we resisted, the weaker it became. With every step forward, we shouted down our fears. "You're not real. I screamed, clutching a piece of broken pipe like a lifeline. "You're just a shadow." Finally, we cornered it in its lair, a cavernous space filled with floating debris and forgotten toys. It shrank before us, its form shifting wildly, a clown, a leper, a spider, a mass of writhing shadows. "You can't kill me," it snarled, its voice losing its power. "No," I said, stepping forward. "But we can make you disappear." Together, we forced it into the light, our light, the strength of our unity and defiance. It screamed, its form disintegrating into dust, and then it was gone. When we emerged from the sewers, the sky was brighter, the air lighter. Derry felt different, as though a great weight had been lifted. We knew we'd stopped it, at least for now. But we also knew that evil like that never truly dies. It only sleeps. And if it ever wakes again, we'll be ready. I never believed in ghosts. Even as a kid, I was always the first to call out my friends for being scared of the dark or jumping at shadows. But everything changed a year ago. It started when I moved into an old house in a quiet neighborhood. I had just gone through a rough patch, my relationship ended, work was a mess, and I thought a fresh start in a new place would fix everything. The house was cheap, too good to pass up, even if it had that old and creaky vibe. The first night was uneventful. I unpacked, drank a glass of wine, and fell asleep to the sound of rain tapping against the windows. But the next night, I heard something strange, a faint whisper. It was soft, like the rustling of leaves, but unmistakably a voice. I brushed it off as my imagination or the wind. A few nights later, I woke up suddenly. My bedroom was freezing. The kind of cold that makes your breath visible. And then I saw it, a shadow standing at the foot of my bed. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. But the shadow moved, jerky, unnatural, like it didn't belong in this world. I blinked, and it was gone. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just a dream. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. A week later, I met Cole. He was a quiet, pale kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old. He lived in the neighborhood and often sat on the steps outside my house. One evening, I offered him a drink of water and asked why he was always there. He looked at me with these big, haunted eyes and said, "They like you. That's why they're here." I laughed nervously. "Who likes me?" "The ones you can't see," he whispered. "Not yet." I froze. I didn't know what to say. This kid, with his eerie calm, sent chills down my spine. Things escalated after that. Every night, I'd hear whispers, sometimes faint, sometimes louder. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision. Objects in the house would be in different places than I left them. One time, my bathroom mirror was fogged up, and a single word was written on it, "Help." I started seeing people, strangers, in my house. They didn't look like regular people, though. They were pale, with sunken eyes and expressions of anguish. They didn't talk. They just stared. One night, I confronted Cole. "What's happening to me?" I demanded. He hesitated, then said, "You see them, don't you? The dead people. They don't know they're dead. They just want someone to listen." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" "Why me?" "Because you can help them," he said simply. I didn't believe him at first. But then I started listening. One night, I sat in my living room and said out loud, "If you're here, show yourself." And they did. A woman in a torn dress appeared by the window. She didn't look at me directly, but she started speaking. Her voice was shaky, full of pain. She talked about her husband, about how she'd been waiting for him, how she didn't understand why he never came back. It hit me then, these weren't just ghosts. They were people. Lost, broken people who didn't know how to move on. Over the next few months, I became something of a mediator, I guess. The ghosts came to me with their stories, unfinished business, regrets, questions. And I did my best to help them. There was the old man who didn't know he'd died in a fire, still searching for his dog. A young woman who'd been in a car accident and couldn't remember her name. A teenage boy who carried the weight of a terrible secret. Each time, I'd listen. Sometimes it was enough for them to realize the truth. Other times, I'd have to dig deeper, finding answers for them in old newspapers, records, or talking to their surviving loved ones. But not all of them were harmless. One night, I encountered something darker. I was in the basement, looking for an old box of photos, when the door slammed shut behind me. The air turned icy, and a low growl filled the room. A figure emerged from the shadows, more monstrous than human. Its face was twisted with rage, its movements erratic. This wasn't a spirit looking for peace, it was something angry, something vengeful. It lunged at me, and for a moment, I thought it was all over. But then I remembered what Cole had said, they just want someone to listen. So I stood my ground. "What do you want?" I shouted. "Tell me." The figure froze, its expression shifting. Slowly, it began to speak. It told me about its pain, its anger, its need for justice. And as I listened, its form softened. By the time it finished, it was just a man, a broken, grieving man who finally found peace. That's my life now. I still see them, the lost souls, the forgotten ones. They come to me with their stories, their pain, their unfinished lives. And I do my best to help them. I've learned to live with the whispers, the cold spots, the shadows that move in the corners of my eyes. Because in the end, they're not so different from us. They just want to be heard, to be understood, to be remembered. And maybe, in helping them, I've found my own purpose.
The world ended quietly. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. It started as a miracle, a cure for cancer, they called it. The breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. Within weeks, hospitals were rolling out the treatments, and people celebrated in the streets. For a moment, it felt like humanity had conquered death itself. But then things changed. People who'd taken the cure began to act strange. First, it was irritability. Then came the insomnia, followed by violent outbursts. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. The infected, what we started calling the changed, weren't human anymore. They were pale, hairless, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. And they were hungry. When the outbreak hit my city, I was a researcher working for a small biotech company. We'd been studying the treatment, trying to understand why it worked so well. When the reports of violent reactions started coming in, we thought we could fix it. We were wrong. I remember the last day at the lab vividly. The streets outside were in chaos, fires burning, screams echoing in the distance. My colleagues were either fleeing with their families or barricading themselves inside. But I stayed. I thought I could find a solution. That was a year ago. Now it's just me. The city is unrecognizable. Nature has started reclaiming it, vines creeping up skyscrapers and grass sprouting through cracks in the pavement. During the day, it's almost peaceful. Birds chirp, and the sun glistens off the broken glass of abandoned cars. But at night, everything changes. The changed come out when the sun sets. They can't stand the light. It burns their skin, so they hide during the day. But when darkness falls, they hunt. I live in a fortified apartment complex on the edge of the city. Every window is boarded up, and every door is reinforced. At sunset, I lock myself in and pray that the night passes without incident. Every morning, I go out to scavenge. Food, water, medicine, it's all scarce now. I've memorized the locations of every convenience store, pharmacy, and gas station in the area. Most are picked clean, but occasionally, I'll find a can of soup or a forgotten stash of energy bars. The worst part is the silence. I haven't seen another living person in months. Sometimes I think I hear voices, laughter, or footsteps, but it's always a trick of the mind. Loneliness does things to you, makes you see things, hear things. But one day, something changed. I was walking through an old bookstore when I heard it, a faint shuffling sound. At first, I froze, my heart pounding. The changed didn't usually come out during the day, but sometimes they'd find a dark corner and wait. I crept toward the noise, gripping my crowbar tightly. Turning a corner, I saw her, a young woman, no older than 20, crouched behind a shelf. She was alive.
Her name was Sam.
She'd been living with a small group of survivors, but got separated during a scavenging run. We spent the next few hours cautiously talking, sharing stories about how we'd survived. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. Sam stayed with me after that. We formed a routine, scavenging during the day, barricading ourselves at night. It was safer together, but the nights were still terrifying. One evening, just as the sun was setting, we heard them. A low growl, followed by the sound of scraping claws. They'd found us. The Changed attacked with an intensity I'd never seen before. They threw themselves against the doors and windows, shrieking and howling. Sam and I fought back, using everything we had, makeshift weapons, traps, even a Molotov cocktail I'd crafted. By dawn, the apartment was in ruins, but we were alive. After that, I knew we couldn't stay. The Changed were learning, adapting. They'd find us again, and next time, we might not survive. Sam and I decided to leave the city, heading for a rumored safe zone in the countryside. The journey was long and dangerous, but it gave us hope. As we walked through the abandoned highways, I thought about the world we'd lost and the one we were trying to build. Maybe humanity wasn't completely gone. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to start over. I still have nightmares about the Changed, about the faces of the people I couldn't save, the friends I lost. But I also dream about the future, about a time when the world might heal. Until then, I'll keep moving. I'll keep surviving. Because sometimes hope is all we have left.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video to show your support and help us create more content like this. Share it with your friends and family who love thrilling and spooky tales. Comment below your thoughts, theories, or your own scary experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to TerraFlix and hit the bell icon to never miss a chilling story. Stay tuned for more spine-tingling adventures.